All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to Sunday Leftovers. I'm Danny Moore. So glad you're with us again. We're joined once again with Pastor Eric. Pastor Eric, how about you give us a quick recap of what we learned on Sunday?
Yeah. So, Sunday we jumped back into our series, Lord of All. So we took a couple-week break just because we were celebrating some feast days there, the Feast of the Ascension and the Feast of Pentecost. So we started off with four sermons for the Lord of All series, and took a 2-week break, and now we're jumping back into it for 3 more weeks. So that's going to take us through the end of June. And this time we were looking at that Jesus is Lord of our health. So we were exploring our bodies specifically, and how Jesus is Lord of our bodies, and how Paul specifically, how he conceptualized that, and how he thought about his own body when it came to the lordship of Jesus. And so we looked at 1 Corinthians chapter 9, which Paul addresses some issues in the Corinthian church and has some responses to that. And particularly he seems to be dealing with these kind of Judaizers is what we would call them. So these Jewish Christians who insist that all Christians be Jews before they're Christians. So, they have to be circumcised, they have to be kosher, all those things. And his response, of course, throughout the epistles is that, no, you don't. Like, you don't actually have to be a Jew in order to follow Jesus. And so, of course, a lot of those rules with the Jewish law have to do with your body, what you can and can't touch, circumcision, what you can and can't eat, all those kinds of things. It has a lot to do with the body. And so he's reflecting on that. And, he essentially fell into this where there's this idea of freedom, that as Christians we have freedom in the gospel and freedom in Jesus Christ. We are not bound by we're not bound by any human law. We're not bound by the Jewish law of the Old Testament because Christ fulfilled it. So we're free. We're free in respect to all. We do not have to be Jews. We do not have to follow the law. But he says then you have to temper that freedom with love. He doesn't say that explicitly in chapter 9 of 1 Corinthians, but that's kind of the theme throughout the epistles, is that he has this goal of reaching people for Jesus, of building the kingdom, expanding the kingdom, and he says he will do whatever he needs to do with his body. So if he's dealing with Jews, he restricts what he eats, he restricts how he behaves around Jews to preach the gospel effectively to them. If he's with Gentiles, non-Jews, he doesn't follow the Jewish laws because it wouldn't make sense to Gentiles. So he eats whatever they're eating, and he lets his conscience do that. He eats pork, he eats meat sacrificed to idols, no problem, and because he wants to reach them. So he kind of goes through this litany of, to the weak I become weak, to the strong I become strong, I do all things, become all things to all people, so that I might reach some. So he actually sees his body as this opportunity to build the kingdom, and he has self-control, and he actually says punishes. It means bruise, but it means to wrench into submission his own body in order to effectively love others. That's kind of the big idea that we ended up with.
So, there's a whole lot packed in there. And I was thinking of a few questions. There's some would say that that whole I become this to these people and that to that. There's a worry about becoming hypocrites in that. Do you want to unpack that a little bit? How it's not really hypocrisy. It's bigger than that.
Because it's not, so when he's with Jews, I think that we could assume that he's still, and we know in fact that when he was around Jewish believers, Jewish Christians, he still proclaimed the gospel, and he still taught them that, hey, you don't have to abide by these laws. In fact, I think that's what happens in 1 Corinthians, it happens in Galatians, and it happens in Acts. I think it's Acts chapter 13 maybe, which is where the council at Jerusalem, where they kind of settle this issue. Paul goes there and he confronts Peter, and he confronts a lot of these Jewish Christians, and he says, hey, no, we don't actually have to do this. So he does what it takes not to harm his witness, but he still preaches the gospel, and he still corrects. And so same thing with Gentiles. It's not like he's going into a Gentile's house and eating meat sacrificed to idols and telling them, hey, it's okay to go and worship idols. No, he's preaching the gospel, but he's just not allowing his body to be a stumbling block for his proclamation of the gospel. So if he goes into a Jewish house and eats with these Jews, if him flaunting his freedom and eating pork or whatever in front of these people would make it so that he couldn't effectively witness to them, he's going to restrict his own freedom for their good. So maybe maybe a pretty easy example in today's world that I think is a pretty easy example in today's world would be, we have freedom to eat and drink what we want, right? We have freedom to do that. And so that means, you can drink alcoholic beverages. It's not a problem. In fact, that's a gift from God. And we're told in the new creation, we're going to drink wine. Like, we're going to have feasts. We're going to enjoy the fruit of the vine. We're going to enjoy alcohol. That's going to be a joyous thing. But if you have friends or family that, maybe they can't handle their alcohol. If they start drinking, they can't stop. Or maybe they're a recovering alcoholic and this is a stumbling block. Then, you reduce your freedom around them.
Right.
Not because you're a hypocrite, but because you love them.
Right.
And so you're going to, for their good, you're going to reduce your freedom.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the basic principle that that Paul's getting at there.
I really think that swings back around to the fact that, just a couple chapters later is the big love chapter.
Yeah, that's right.
In 1 Corinthians 13. Yeah. So that's, he's kind of deconstructing everything about all the rules and regulations and everything that we've just grown up believing.
Yeah.
He takes that apart bit by bit by bit by bit, and then he builds it back up in love. And that's the focus. And so, it's not that we're being hypocritical by not drinking around our friend who struggled with alcoholism. It's more loving to not drink, because drinking is the thing you want to do for you.
Right, yeah.
It's more loving to not do that for their sake.
Right, yeah.
And so it's just, the biggest thing is, can you do it in love? Can you step on a line so that you are loving this person and opening them up to the gospel? And I think that's where we people from the outside want to call us hypocrites.
Right.
But if we can be focused on loving, then that's what the gospel is calling us to do.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that love dominate, and that's kind of been a theme that I've kind of played at through each of these sermons, is that for Jesus to be Lord of all, if he is our Lord, the way that he showed his lordship and his authority is through love and self-sacrifice. So again and again and again through this series, I keep hammering that point, that it really has to do with how are you abounding in love. And when you submit to Jesus in these areas, what happens is love abounds. So a good example of that, a really clear example, would be back on May 8th, on Mother's Day. We talked about families. And that was really the first sermon that I took this principle and really applied it.
Yeah.
May 1st was our first in the series, and we talked about Saul's conversion, and how he changed his view, and how seeing Jesus as Lord of all changes how we understand the world. But that first one was Mother's Day, and it was about family. And, he talks about, in Ephesians 5, husbands and wives. And for our modern sensibility, it feels very antiquated the way that he talks about it. But what I think, if you take that passage and you take it into the context of what's going on at the time, and the context of the whole arc of history for the scriptures, as God is revealing himself slowly over time, what we see is that that's actually a pretty radical reversal of what the readers would have understood. And the person who has authority because of society, because of how society is set up, the husband, what Paul actually says is, to exercise that authority means that you sacrifice the most and you lay down your life. The person who's under you isn't necessarily asked or demanded that they lay down their life for you. But you in authority have to lay down your life for the other, for the people who are below you. Yeah, so you give that up. And so I think that all throughout this series, it goes back to that issue of yes, you have freedom. Yes, in this case, you have freedom, right? This is the situation that you're in, but you have to understand that love needs to be the dominating force in your life and how you make decisions. And that's the way of Jesus. So you have freedom, but your love ought to dominate you more than your freedom. And I think that's the basic principle here. Is okay, so you can eat whatever you want, right? It's not a sin to eat anything. You can eat unhealthy food. You can eat healthy food. It's not a sin. You're free. But over a lifetime of eating unhealthy, over a lifetime of neglecting your body, over a lifetime of doing these things, you're actually reducing your ability to love others.
Yes.
And so, the examples that I talked about were hey, if you eat really poorly and you bloat hugely overweight and you're not able to get on the floor and play with your kids or your grandkids, you're not able to love them as well as you could. And
as well as you could.
Yeah. And there's something important there that being able to to hug and to kiss your children, to play with them. Like, you're communicating the gospel to them in those things. And so you might still be able to tell them the gospel, but you can't use your body to show them the gospel, you know. And so that's the whole thing, is we want love to dominate. And so if love dominates, then then it will. Like we'll be like, okay, I want to be healthy because I want to love my kids and my grandkids and my great grandkids. Like, I want to be around for that.
Right.
And so, of course, it doesn't always happen because sin is still corrupts our world, and our bodies are still corrupted by sin, and they get weak and die. You know, you get cancer, those kinds of things. So, so that's not a hard and fast rule, but but the principle is love ought to dominate how you make decisions. So So for you, then, what was your like big, you know, as you were listening to the sermon on Sunday, like what was your big takeaway? What was the challenge for you personally then?
My favorite part was what you just talked about, how the point of it all is not for us to have some high and mighty point to stand on of like, yes, I have done all blah, 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 blah. I am a peak physical specimen and all that stuff. You know, it's not about your own glory, it's about the glory of God. That I think the phrase you said was that your body, you, are a tool for the gospel.
Yeah, that's right.
That it's not about you achieving something on your own power. It's about you being in a place for God to use you well. You know, so doing the hard things that are going to set you up to be in a spot for God to use you. And that's the focus, is that it's really about what can I achieve for the kingdom? How can my sacrifices right now further the kingdom? And I think that that's a lot better motivation than myself. I always say that I'm my own worst enemy. I will do so much for other people before I'll ever do one thing for myself. And so to remind myself that, you know, my health and my choices are not about me. It's about my wife. It's about my son. It's about our staff. It's about our church. It's about all these opportunities that God has put in front of me to be a witness and to provide for other people. That's the purpose. And I think if I can hang on to that, I'll be a lot more motivated to do the healthy things I know I should be doing.
No, that's really good. And I know I admitted at the top that, you know, this is something that I struggle with, right? Like I don't excel. I am not above reproach in this area. Because for me, food often becomes a comfort. And then on top of that, not only is food a comfort when I'm stressed, but I also like to party. Like I like to be with friends and family, and I like to eat and to drink beer and to I like to celebrate, just because that's my personality. So I cling to those opportunities to celebrate and enjoy those good things of life. And, you know, that compounds on top of each other over years, where I'm not taking care of myself the way that I really ought to be. And right now it's fine, but down the road it won't be fine, right? So that's the whole thing, is you having to make that switch that you're talking about of no, this isn't for me. Like, and if I want to be able to enjoy the fellowship and celebration later, I have to be able to get over that comfort, right? That self-serving, using food for a self-serving purpose of comfort now, so then I can celebrate more later, right? And because, you know, for me, those kind of get-togethers, it's not just fun, but it's actually like those are, you know, for me that's just yesterday we spent all afternoon with our life group. We had like I don't know we just had a get-together with our life group that. You know, we went over to somebody's house at 2:30. We didn't leave till like 6 to 6:30. You know, because we were just enjoying each other. You know, we had dinner. It was potluck style, so we all brought stuff, and like to me, that's not just fun, but it's also a gospel opportunity.
It is.
You know, that we are pouring into each other. You know, those conversations come up, you know, naturally, that we're talking about, you know, the sermon. You know, we talked about the sermon that morning. We talk about what we're reading. I mean, it's a gospel opportunity. And I have to be of the mind of like, that's good, but I can't have that all the time, right?
Well, you can't have that all the time, and you can't use that as an excuse to indulge in the areas you shouldn't be indulged. You know, you still got to limit yourself, and in those moments, with in making the healthiest option. So no, I'm right there with you. That's that's the perfect opportunity of like, cheat day.
It's
and
great.
My cheat day turns into a cheat week, turns into a cheat month, and I'm just like, I don't even want to get out of bed anymore. And then you just the joy is gone after a time, and then you just kind of keep in the bad habits.
Right.
And
that's exactly right.
I know exactly how that feels.
So what are you taking away with you this week? What are you focusing on this week with this?
This week, I'm going to be setting myself some new exercise goals.
Oh, cool.
I've really slacked off on my own personal fitness of telling myself, like, no, I've got too much work to do and this and that. And be like, you know what? That's just an excuse. It's easier to say, oh, I'm too busy with my family than to actually sit down and do these 15-minute goals that I can do every day. So this week I'm going to be setting myself some new goals and reminding myself that it's for my family, not for me, is why I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so no, for me, then I think that my goal with this is to cut down on that like snacking, because it's just so easy. It's the little microtransactions of like, oh, $1 here, $3.50 here, $2 here. It's like easy to just kind of get like trapped in that where you're just like, oh,
buy
man,
3 cheeseburgers and get free fries.
That's kind of nice just to you're driving home from work or to work or running errands. You're like, oh, I can do whatever. I think that's what my focus is to like cut down on that, because again, those are just those little decisions that build up, and
that's definitely my Achilles heel too. Just like, you just swing right through and you go.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's easy.
Yeah, it's easy. But so I think that's mine, because again, it's just and having that question of, all right, is this a decision that I'm making in love? Like, am I making this decision because of love, or just because I'm trying to satisfy whatever, or because I'm stressed out about X, Y, and Z? So I think that's for me. So
cool,
good. Well, hey, thanks for joining us this morning. Appreciate you hanging out with us this Monday. And thank you, Danny, for being here and for being pretty constant here on Sunday Leftovers. We appreciate it. So,
thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you guys have a great week, and we'll see you later.
God bless. Are you starting or am I starting?
That is totally going in.
No, it's not. Don't put that in, please. Please. Oh, no.
Danny Eric in the morning.
Nice.